So
So
why
now
do we care about him?
we move on. This is an interesting one
I
today
like Terrence
from
Ross though. Terrence Ross is not
from
bad.
this is probably the guy you would have given up in a potential Powell deal in terms of money. Josh Richardson. Schroeder certainly on the block. I think everyone's available on the Celtics. Or at least I did until Heavy.com, Joe Sway's site there, Steve Bulpett. Another
I like it.
bombshell report today saying that Richardson not necessarily on the trade block. They like him. He's got that second-year extension. He's their salary if they want to get anything done around the edges of the roster, but he has played well in
Yeah.
recent weeks. He's had some real nice closing stretches of games. I remember that Knicks game we were at, Sherrod. The Hornets game that he closed out with the starters there, and him in for Horford with the starters, plus 26 per 100. So that is
Yeah.
looking like an effective closing unit for Boston right now, and he's obviously a big part of their depth too. I think what's underrated with him as well is if you trade Schroeder, he's probably your backup point guard essentially, which we haven't seen him do a lot this year, but it is something he's capable of. I just find it interesting, and I am going to pull up the article, Joe Sway, but not on the block. I mean, like you got to give up somebody if you're going to make a trade here at the deadline. And I like Richardson. He's been a pleasant surprise. I did not like the player coming into Boston, but I've been sold since the way he's played this year and his personality and other things that he's brought. It's just I'm not buying that he's untouchable or anything like that.
I don't think you would call him untouchable, Bobby, but I think what's most important to point out is that he's now shooting 41% from behind the arc.
They're not looking to
That-
dump him, I guess, is what he's saying.
Well,
Yeah.
no, I think what he's saying is things have changed, and yeah, they're not looking to dump him. He's not like at the top of the list of guys that they need to trade or sell. I think this is exactly what they wanted to see out of him, but they didn't get that consistency up until this point. Now, the fact that he's shooting 41%, he's challenging Grant Williams, as the best 3-point shooter on this team. I mean, that's exactly was part of that extra year. If you're Brad Stevens, you were like, look, okay, we're bringing this guy in. Let's tack on an extra year because we think he's going to pop. We think he's going to revert to being that guy who we saw in Miami. And it was late, but that's what we're seeing now. He's finally reached that plateau of connecting on, over 40% of his 3-pointers. And right now, I think he's dialed in. I think he's committed. I think, we talked about this a couple of nights ago. I think it's a matter of now you got a motivated Richardson, and now that translates on the defensive end of the floor where the Celtics have been solid on that end, but they could need all the extra help that they could get. And I think having him focused right now and dialed in and if the Celtics are on the verge of going into the playoffs with this same sort of momentum, I think he's going to be a big part of that. Call him a culture guy, if you will, which is something that we would have never said 2 months ago, but I think he's sort of flourished into that guy. And you're seeing that. He's on his feet a lot. He's cheering on his teammates. He's always smiling out there. I think he's a good fit for what this culture is and what Ime's rebuilds in that locker room.
Bulpett wrote, teams that thought Richardson might be very available are finding that's not necessarily the case. He points out the Fournier exception, the Thompson exception are most expected to be used as trade tools when the offseason arrives and teams have a better idea of where they are and where they are not. So Bulpett, one among many, painting a quiet picture this deadline for this team, which I don't love. I mean, would you rather have Richardson right now, who, listen, I've been sold on, or a guy like Harrison Barnes, who this team's been connected to for a long time and
Damn
has
it,
multiple
Bobby.
years on his contract?
Could you stop aiming high at these expensive options, man? That's another one. Sherrod,
Hey.
what do you think?
I think Bobby's that kid who, if you say, Bobby, we're gonna go to the store and get some
Everyone's
gas.
riding high off the streak right now.
Bobby's all about going to Roof Chris, and when we say let's go get something to eat, Bobby wants to go to like Roof Chris and some shit like that. No, but
Yep.
this is the thing though. This is the thing that happens every time this time of year. The team that starts playing well before
You gotta pay for good food, Sherrod. You're gonna end up
Yeah,
at Mickey
right.
D's.
Yeah, see,
there
if
are
I
worse
was,
places. to be.
it's like when your mom tells you, "All right, we're coming in here, but don't ask me for nothing." All right, like that's what I
Right.
tell Bobby that.
They're playing better, and Josh Richardson. If you're being honest, he's been your best source of offense off the bench. And if you were to move him, even if you got another guy who, let's say, is a scorer, there's still intangibles that he brings to the table that if you're the Boston Celtics, you don't necessarily want to part with. He fits in well with your Jays. They like him. They like the role that he plays. He has become a very reliable 3-point shooter, which is something he could never say about him previously. And maybe to me, most important, he wants to be here. And I think that's something that for Boston specifically, needs to be stressed. When you get guys here who play well and they want to be here, that's why. I mean, you look at
Right.
just the evolution of Marcus Smart over the last like 2-3 weeks. There's no doubt he wants to be here. And there's no doubt about that. And so when you have guys who play well and they clearly want to, they're invested in your organization, invested in the culture. You have to think long and hard before breaking that up. You only, to me, at that point, you have to, if you're going to break it up, you have to break it up because of the talent you're getting back. You break
Right.
because the talent is so great that even if they're not a natural fit in your culture, they're so good that you're still going to win games. You know, like
You want to
you,
add to that, right? You
yeah,
want to add to him.
like you don't know how good Clay Thompson is going to be for the rest of the season, but if you had a chance to add him to the mix, you damn will do it. You absolutely will do it.
Right.
Absolutely
Yeah.
will do it 25 out of 25 times. So, I, again, I like what Josh Richardson is giving, and it makes sense for them to not want to part ways with him. But let me be clear about something though, and this is something I think a lot of people, I think they get it twisted. Just because they're not making calls to say that they're open to trading him doesn't mean that they're not open to trading him. They're still going to
Right.
take calls. It's not like teams are going to call them and say, "Hey, can we talk about Josh Richardson?" They're going to say, "Nah, we can't talk about that. No,
how
no,
how dare you bring him up? Yeah. Right.
how dare you bring up our seventh man and try to
I
kick him
wouldn't
out?"
sell him. No, I wouldn't. If someone even
You,
calls and offers you a first, it's tempting. Depends what
you
kind of first it is,
But my
obviously.
point is, you have to take that phone call. You
Yeah.
have to take that text. You have to address that. You don't just say, "Nope, he's not available." And that's why
Right.
to me, there's only a handful of players throughout the NBA that, as we get close to the trade deadline, without question they ain't going anywhere. Chris Paul is not going anywhere. LeBron James is not going anywhere. Anthony Davis probably isn't going anywhere. But to me, he's not untouchable. There's so few guys in the NBA that you can look at and say without a shadow of a doubt that guy is not on the trading block. And Josh,
James Harden. We'll get to him in a
Yeah.
minute.
Oh, that's a great
he,
segue, Bobby. You should have used that
he is available.
No,
But
I
that's
want to. I want to. I want to stick on this for just one more minute. I hope people aren't getting too high off the streak here, because if we talked 2-3 weeks ago, everyone would be saying, "Oh, Richardson, let's try to get something better there." People were more open to moving Smart back then. This team has turned it around, but I don't feel like they are suddenly East contenders here. I don't think their ceiling is necessarily even above the first round at this point. You're still a 9 seed here, even at 10 out of 14 coming in tonight. I'm not sure where they are exactly after tonight, but they're still in that play-in picture right now. There's still a number of talented teams that could really push you in those spots. So there's still got to be a desire among this front office to improve here. And Richardson's one of the guys that I think you can do better than. I would love to have a Barnes type guy over him. If it takes a pick, go ahead and do it, but you're sending out salary, you're matching it, you're staying below the tax. There's ways to do this from a financial standpoint that don't make you, uh, you know, do a heist on Wick's wallet before the season ends here. And Richardson's salary is a big part of that. I've been impressed. I haven't been blown away by Richardson. He's been unavailable at times. I think you're getting a little bit of fool's gold with the 3-point percentage. I mean, this guy is not a 41% 3-point shooter. He had that massive streak in the other game that again gave him a boost there. So I'm looking at this team right now, and they're playing well, but what's their potential here? Who are they really going to push in the East with this group, even playing as well as they are right now? You still see the lapses offensively. They struggled in that second quarter tonight, just scoring 18 points against a really bad defense. The game still looks so hard for Brown and Tatum in terms of spacing. So you got to have some urgency here to upgrade this roster. You can't just look at yourself going on a little stretch here, especially as inconsistent as this group is said, and say this is the group. I mean, I look at this roster right now, and I can't be satisfied with what they have right now still, even though everyone's playing in their roles and settling down a little bit. They need some help, especially with Joe Sway said off the bench. That group leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the big concern with this group is that second unit. To me, they are the Achilles heel of this roster. They're the group that I am most concerned with. But here's the flip side to that: the Celtics are basically what 3.5? I think like 3.5 games out of the number 3 spot in the East.
Right. That's what
I
I'm
mean,
about to get into.
I
Yeah.
mean that's literally like having
But they're
basically like a
playing
week and
some
a half.
crap teams right
But
now.
Bobby, the conference is cratering right now. Like
Yes,
this is the crack in
Their schedules
in
are
the
getting
conference.
tougher. The Celtics is
This
getting easier.
I think
this is
that
the
the
break
thing,
that the Celtics were
right?
waiting on.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know.
Bobby, the concern is to me what is this team going to be able to do in the playoffs? Because I do think that even if they stood the course, because of the way they're hitting the crapitude section of their season, they're going to win a lot of games. They're going to win a lot more games than they're going to lose, and that's going to allow them to potentially get a higher seed
But
come
what's the
playoff time.
goal of this season? That's still my
See,
question. What's the
I
direction here? What are they trying to accomplish?
I think I
Compete.
think at this point, yeah,
Compete.
Compete, and then what? You're middle of the conference. You haven't really
this
upgraded the
this
roster
this is
here.
what you want to do, Bobby. This is what you want to do. You want to be able to compete night in, night out with whoever the hell you put out there. You want Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown to continue to evolve and develop and just magnify their ability to lead this team going forward. You want to have salary cap flexibility, which is why you're open to moving guys at the trade deadline and this offseason, a la Al Horford. And you, maybe most important, you want to make sure that all those things that we're talking about, everyone that matters to this organization understands those things, are on the same page with those things, and are rowing in that direction. That's what you want out of the season. And the early portion of the schedule didn't really allow that because you had guys injured, you had guys in health and safety protocol. You really didn't
But
know
if you
what
get a
your
guy injured again, this group's in trouble, I think.
yeah, you're back to where you were back in November, December. There's no
Yeah.
question about you, and especially if it's one of your top 3 or 4 guys. Because I mean, to me,
Oh,
right now, there's three guys that, in my mind, you can't afford them to miss any games of significance. It's one thing if it's a game here or there just for either rest or whether it's like a little bump or bruise, but there are 3 guys that you cannot afford to lose any more time with this year.
Yeah, you know what, Bobby? I think we're all not naive enough to think that this team's a championship contender, or at least a team that can win the East. But what they do have right now is momentum, and you couple that with the fact that the conference is cratering. You got the Brooklyn Nets falling apart, man. They're talking about potentially trading, one of their most consistent guys this year. Durant's hurt. I think this is a great time for the Celtics to capitalize, but at the same time, you don't want to sacrifice enough talent or too much talent that you end up not being able to compete on the back end of the regular season. Now, someone like Josh Richardson is interesting because you had that extra year. So, does it make sense for them to bring in a rental, essentially trying to replace him and hoping that it's going to better the second unit,
I
or at least
wouldn't
to
do
keep
a
one of your
rental.
top guys?
No.
Right, but I think you have to remember that he wouldn't be a rental for another team, right? I think having him on the books for another year could turn out to be a good thing for the Celtics, and I think when you look forward to what this team can do at the trade deadline, whether it's a buyout option or whether it's bringing in someone that can help you in that
Listen, I
rotation,
like
that's what you
Richardson.
do.
I like Richardson. I love Barnes. And we'll get into some other names too. I saw a couple people talking
Yeah,
about
but
like
right
some of
now,
the other.
Bobby, you're trying to instill a culture. Like you're trying to this quote unquote bridge
Is
year. I think
Richardson
that's
part
what
of
it's more
their?
about.
I
I
guess
think
he's
he
part
is
of
right
that
now.
culture.
I
But
think he
like,
is. I just think again, Bobby, you're thinking about you're thinking about putting together a championship team within the next 5 days. Like it's just not going to happen like that, you know. And I think
no,
right
I'm
now it's
not. I
most of
just think you're
I think it's
several
most of
steps away.
right, which is just where we always thought this team was going to be. I mean, we never expected this team to be a championship contender, and nor did we expect it to turn into that overnight. But what we didn't expect was this 500 team throughout the course of the entire season, essentially. So now that you finally found some momentum, you want to keep the guys that are instilling that culture. You want to keep the guys that are going to keep that message flowing. And guys who are locked in, you know. And look, I don't want to go on a tirade about why this team cannot trade Josh Richardson, but I just think again, it's about trying to help one of the few options you have off the bench, trying to strengthen that bench. And if it means trading Schroeder and a young guy, or Schroeder and a second rounder and a young guy to help consolidate that bench and bring in a guy that's going to be a weapon, who can score, who can defend, then I'm all for it. I want to
If
see this roster better after the deadline than what we see now. But I'm not ready to say the Celtics have to go out and get someone that's like a 17-point scorer. I don't think that's it.
if you could do Richardson, Schroeder, and a first for Barnes, throw Neesmith in there maybe as the money or whatever, just a throwing guy. You're not doing
No,
it?
No, I'm not giving him a first and all that all the
Yeah,
stuff.
because Bobby,
Hell
that's
no.
your squad after that. Like that's
Hell
your
no.
squad. That's it. Like you've
Hell
really
no.
tied yourself to that core.
If I'm going to
You
give them
know.
both of those guys, I'm not giving them a pick. In
Man.
fact, hell, I want a pick in return. I
we
need
dreamt of
Yeah,
you
we
give
should give
me
me a
one of
pick.
your picks. Right,
Yeah.
right.
we dreamt of the Celtics finally having a roster where you could throw some guys into deals and get stuff done. And now guys are falling in love with Richardson
No,
and
no, no,
Rob
no,
and
Bobby.
Smart
The
and
kids didn't do their part. Okay, they didn't develop, and that's not on them. Maybe that's just who they are, right? The Pritchards and the Romeos and the Neesmith. They haven't developed yet. That's quite frankly just what it boils down to. You know, the Grant Williamses and the Robert Williams. I guess I feel like we have to go a few years back. I mean, those guys are locked in right now to the rotation, whereas those other guys I just mentioned, they're still fighting for a spot. You know.
so I guess the Schroeder thing, I've heard a couple of things, bouncing around from him over the last couple of weeks here. Bulls are interested. You could potentially get Troy Brown back for him, who's fine. He's not Schroeder. He's just a guy to fill that spot.
He's no
Some
Barnes.
savings, yeah. So that would just essentially be a dump right there to Chicago. The Clippers are obviously in the market now for a backup point guard, so you would look at them potentially taking on Schroeder in that spot. And I actually like the idea that Gerard brought up, now that I've thought about it a little bit. Bledsoe for pennies, although you'd really run into some frustrating lineups late in games. I'll warn you on that one. Wouldn't
Well,
be a
he's not going to
bad
be there.
pickup, especially with this team's identity. Yeah, you could potentially sit him on a minimum deal late in games.
Yeah.
Different
I
situation
mean,
than what he's been
yeah,
in.
yeah. You're not going to. If I'm watching him play key minutes in the fourth quarter, it means probably they're losing badly or they've got a huge lead. I don't see him being put in a position where he has to play a pivotal role. But again, that's assuming, and it's a big assumption that he's going to get bought out and he'll be looking to go somewhere and try to reestablish his value. That's what that would be about.
And there'll be minutes from here, which are always valuable if he's trying to restore his value and
Yeah.
getting a place that fits him a little bit. But there's also ring chasing opportunities too for him, and that is not this team. So
Right. And he knows that. Right.
we'll see where that goes. That's the Celtics' latest.